Australia is a giant U.S. military base with kangaroos. Notes from the edge of the narrative matrix. Everyone around the world should criticize the U.S. empire constantly and without apology. Nobody anywhere ever needs to justify or defend criticizing the most powerful, destructive, and influential government on earth. It is always right to criticize America in any way you choose. Consider the possibility that the most powerful government on earth got that way largely by being willing to do whatever it takes to claw its way to the top, no matter how many people it has needed to kill and oppress to get there and remain there. The U.S. empire is the single most depraved and murderous power structure on earth. The Democratic and Republican parties are two Nazis arguing over which route to take to bring their captives to the concentration camp. Growing up in crushing poverty is inherently traumatic. Not everyone who's been traumatized goes on to hurt people, but everyone who hurts people has been traumatized. Supporting a status quo which includes an impoverished underclass is supporting widespread crime and violence. There's a tweet by 60 Minutes Australia with this outrageous propaganda video attacking New Zealand for going along with China on a few mild things. Caitlin tweeted, "Oh my fucking god, could Australia be any more of a pathetic, simpering basement gimp for Washington? Our politics, our media, everything about this fucking place is just grease for the US war machine. We're not a country, we're a giant military base with kangaroos." If you believe anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, then you're naturally going to see an uptick in anti-Semitism every time Zionism rips children's bodies apart with explosives. What is being done to Palestinians would be horrific and inexcusable regardless of the ethnicity or religion of their persecutors. Opposing apartheid injustice and abuse has nothing to do with opposing anyone's religion, and attempts to claim it does are made in bad faith. If I wanted to sabotage the pro-Palestine movement, I would make myself a part of the conversation by criticizing Israeli abuses and supporting Palestinian rights. Then I'd start going, this rise in anti-Semitism sure is concerning though. Can we pause and focus on this, please? Zionists will spend 100 times more energy attacking and smearing an influential Jewish defender of Palestinian rights than opposing a brazen, Jew-hating white supremacist. Supporters of Israeli apartheid don't care about fighting anti-Semitism. They care about narrative control. The rapist was forced to murder his rape victim because she tried to fight him off. The rapist has a right to defend himself. Rape has a right to exist. This is actually a very complex issue, too complicated for you to understand. If Moscow hadn't intervened in Crimea in 2014 and Syria in 2015, the US wouldn't have begun training us all to hate Russia in 2016. If Russia would have just let the US do its thing with the Ukraine coup and the proxy war to topple Damascus, there never would have been a Russia panic. But then, Russia would have eventually found itself surrounded by a sea of hostile empire and forced to relinquish its sovereignty. Same goes for China asserting its own power regionally and economically. At some point, Russia and China both realized that if they don't start taking bold action to prevent the U.S. empire from absorbing the entire world, they're going to slowly see their allies and trading partners disappear until they've got no choice but to join. That's all we're seeing with all this hysteria. If you don't interfere in the empire's agendas of conquest and absorption, it won't be in a hurry to get rid of you. It'll just absorb you when it's got time and nothing else to devour. Interfere in its growth, though, and you're in for it. Steal from the New York Times. It is not legitimate for the paper of record, whose narratives shape your world, to hide its stories from you behind a paywall. Use apps, use private browsers, use archive.is. Any method used to access New York Times and similar outlets without paying them is valid. The U.S. centralized oligarchic empire has no ideology and no values beyond the acquisition of more power. If Islamic fundamentalism serves them in one part of the world, they'll support that there, while simultaneously backing woke progressivism elsewhere if that serves them there. Imperialists often favor corporate liberals over conservatives in the Western world, because they now see liberals as better custodians of the empire's Western branches. There's dwindling support for Bible thumpers and racists in our society, so the empire seeks better drivers. And you may be sure that the opposite would have been the case if our society hadn't become too conscious to accommodate the right's ugliest aspects at mass scale. If racism had retained widespread popular support, all oligarchic institutions would have backed Trump to the hilt. If you think it was a big red pill to realize that the media's narratives about the world are nothing like real life, wait till you realize that the same is true of your own narratives about your own life.